and we are very happy to have Johanna with us. I know Johanna. I met Johanna at Boston for one of the Agile Games Boston. It was a true blessing to see her there. I had a chance to record a podcast with her. So if you guys are interested, you can listen to that one. That was a eye-opening for me how to write articles. She is known as pragmatic manager. She has written 18 books, and I'm sure counting. There are more books in her. She has a very good newsletter called Pragmatic Manager. I recommend you to subscribe to that. And what I love about her is that she describes herself as someone that she can help leaders to see and adopt the way they solve problems. So she's she's teaching, or she's educating them how to see and solve problems. So we are very glad to have her with us. After going through these things, again, I'm not doing justice to introduce her, but she's going to give us a better introduction of her. For this, I need to go to the present mode. I hope you guys can still see my screen. So for the Lean Agile Network, you can follow us on our website, Twitter, LinkedIn, Meetup, and Slack. These are the guys that are making it happen. Myself, Dimitar, Mariam, Nasima, Vain, Raj, Pa, and Arev, and Yasmin. These are the people behind it. And you guys that are attending and coming to these sessions, you guys are the ones that are helping us shape it and helping us move it forward. Thank you. There are two things that we typically shared when we had a physical meetup. It was about the other meetups that are happening in Toronto, but now we have gone virtual, all of us. So I created the website virtualagilecommunity.com. You can see other meetups around the world, and the bit.ly on the left is a list of communities in Toronto and mainly in Canada that I wrote a blog about that. If you know any, you can go and share your virtual agile community in the virtualagilecommunity.com. It just maybe take 15 seconds for me to approve it, but it will show up there. For those of you that are new to LAN, is that we get together every last Friday of the month. Again, it was at lunchtime, but this time we are experimenting with a new time zone so that it helps us to reach more. And we introduce every second week of the month, we have a lean coffee, which is open lean coffee in general or a topic. So last one we did on business agility. Peter, one of the guys that are here, he helped us facilitate that. And in 2 weeks, we are going to have another one. And it's going to be mostly on the topic that we are going to hear from Johanna. So it gives us another chance to talk amongst ourselves in 2 weeks from now. That's it. So without any further ado, or logistics. So for the people that have the similar background to me, these are the people that can help you, any questions you have. For the questions that you guys have, please put in the chat room at regular intervals. Johanna might stop and I can ask her the questions, or you guys can unmute yourself and ask the questions. But any logistic problems, let us know. And without any further ado, Johanna, guys.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. This is always tricky with Keynote because, yeah, who knows what's going to happen. And I'm going to play it. Now, with any luck, you see only one slide. Or do you see the presenter view?
We see the presenter view.
Oh, of course. Oh, God. This is, let me try this. There. Now, do you see only one slide?
No, still two.
All right, fine. If this keeps going, you know what? Heck with it. We're just gonna we're gonna leave it as I'm gonna keep all your smiling faces, and you should see my keynote, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, fine. All right. So I am not going to look at the chat. I'm moving this guy out of the way. All right. So what's really interesting is that when I first started to look at Agile approaches back in the early 2000s, everyone said, we don't need managers. Managers are not for us. We are Agile. We are self-organizing teams. We can do all of our self-management ourselves. So we had a lot of people who said, we just don't need managers in an Agile approach. And part of what I see, I understand why they said that. There were, at the time, there was a lot of control from management. The project managers controlled the Gantt chart. The project, or they often controlled the requirements documents. The project manager said, you will do this and you will do that and you will do this other thing. And the managers were just as bad. So everyone was trying to control the teams. And the problem I see now is that the control is still there. That so many managers say, well, Agile is just for the teams. And there's no leadership. And that's because the environment of the organization is so focused on control as opposed to focus on enabling teams of people to finish work. So what I have said and what I've seen with my clients and work that I've done is that we need to adapt our current mindsets about management and leadership. If we don't adapt them, we can never really get the benefits of an Agile approach. So there are kind of three things I would like you to think about as I walk through these slides. First of all, why management exists. So if I think about why management exists, the first thing is that managers have to manage themselves. So that's the little purple thing, which is I put in think. I guess I could have put in something else, but for me, this is all about thinking. How do my actions change the culture? How do my actions enable or make it more difficult for other people to do their jobs? So that's the thinking thing. The next part is, how do you create a harmonic whole? And these are words from Peter Drucker, right? The harmonic whole came from him in, the 70s or something. And that's where I think about the feeling. People remember how you made them feel, right? They have feelings about your management. They have feelings about their team members. They have feelings about the work. People have feelings. And if we do not think about, there's the thinking thing again. If we do not acknowledge that they have feelings, if we are not able to see what happens for them, we are probably not going to be good enough managers. And then every single organization exists for just one reason: innovation. And what I see so much in organizations is they are so focused on, we must have plans for the next 18 months. We must do 5-year strategic planning. Well, in the age of COVID, you can throw all that out the window. So how do we act? How do we act strategically? How do we create and move towards the purpose of the organization? So those are the three kinds of things. How do we think? How do we feel? How do we help other people feel good about what we're doing? And how do we act so that we move the organization forward? So our agenda for tonight is that great managers manage themselves first. They serve and lead others. Notice it's not manage others. It's serve and lead, and then create an environment of innovation. So let me talk a little bit about congruence. I have found that when I think about my actions in terms of congruence, I am much better at figuring out how to do the right thing. So this is the self-othering context. And I suspect that not everybody is familiar with the Satir congruence model. So here's the brief explanation. if I don't think of the other person in the situation, I blame that other person. I'm the queen of blaming. I will just say that right now. I am not very good at placating. I'm not very good at disregarding myself. But what we often find in organizations is that when challenging issues roll downhill, that the superior manager blames the lower down manager for not doing their job, and the lower down manager blames the team for not doing their job. And if the team says, oh, just get this guy off my back, if you ever hear just get this person off my back, they're placating the other person. So if you have ever been, oh, I wish I could remember the 5 steps of project management status, right? The team says, oh, this is a disaster. It's never going to work. And the first line manager says, we're in trouble. And the middle manager says, we're at risk. And the fourth level manager says, could be a problem. And the fifth level manager says, we're going to make the date, right? All of those people are placating the people above them. That's how that works. Now, it's at least when we blame or placate, we realize that we have humans in the room. There's also the super reasonable. Consider only the context. Well, I've taken myself out of the equation. I've taken the other out of the equation. And if you have ever said, yes, I have. If you have ever said, statistics say, right, where is the human in that sentence? So the context is really important, and the context is not enough. Now, you might have irrelevant conversations where somebody is not thinking about themselves or the other or the context. So I don't know how many baseball fans we have here. I was watching the news before I got on this call, and I think we might have baseball at some point this summer. But I'm not sure that baseball is really that relevant to many of us anymore. It's a different sport than it was back when I was a child. So it's that if you bring up stuff that's not relevant to the conversation at hand, that's when you have an irrelevant conversation. So we're congruent when we balance the self, the other, and the context. And that's this is not easy to do. In fact, there's lots of ways that our organizations make it even more difficult for us to do. So there are all kinds of myths. I've called these myths. They could be illusions or rules or traps. They're anti-patterns of management, actually. But I really want people to read this book, so I'm not calling them anti-patterns. Then you can read all of these there, and I'm happy to give all of you a PDF of the slides. That's not a problem. And Shahin, you're recording this, so we will see all of it. But let me just talk for this business of believing in indispensable employees, or in 10X. So way back when I was a programmer, I worked with a guy named Steve. There were 6 of us in this team. We collaborated. We mostly did our own projects, but we collaborated on some projects. On all the projects that were the platform, everything that supported all of our work, that's what we collaborated on. So Steve, on a Friday afternoon, said, you know, I'm going to look at this editor. I think I can make this editor better. And we all said, you don't want to meet us at the bar for beers? I mean, we were 25, 26, right? We met at the bar for beers every Friday night. So he said, no, you guys go on without me. So Steve managed to spend Friday night, all day Saturday, Saturday night, all day Sunday, and Sunday night. He stayed at work through that entire time, right? 3 all-nighters. And he only waited at work on Monday morning until enough of us came in. And he said, look what I did for you. I did this whole new editor. And the five of us looked at each other and said, okay, you might want to go get some sleep and please take a shower. And we'll look at it while you're gone. So he had done a really good job on what he had done. And he missed all kinds of pieces that we really needed. So it was 90% done, 92% done. It was really close, but it was not usable. So our manager came in and said, wow, Steve really did this all weekend. When are you all gonna use this? And I said, I'm not using it. I can't use it. He doesn't have the 5 things I really need. And Rick said, I'm not using it. It doesn't have the 4 things I really need. And we went on and on and on. And so the manager said, but he's indispensable. He's like a 10X employee. He's really great. And I said, well, yeah, if you never want us to collaborate anymore, yeah, if you really want people like him, I'll find a new job tomorrow. And that's when my manager said, oh, maybe that's not what I should believe in. That manager actually did learn. But I'm sure that all of you know of people who think that there's an indispensable employee, but that person makes more work for the rest of the team. And there's no such thing as a 10X person because it's all about what the team can do, especially in an Agile approach. So we have all these myths about management, and it's all based on how we think about ourselves. So especially if you cannot admit mistakes, if you think you have to solve the team's problem, if you think you're too valuable to take a vacation, all these myths really contribute to a bad environment at work. So when I think about why these myths are so bad, I think about them because they violate what I think of as value-based integrity. And for my pieces of integrity are being honest, being fair, not equal, but fair, being consistent, taking responsibility as a manager, and then treating people with respect. Because if we stop treating people with respect, it all goes out the window. What's really interesting is that when I think about value-based integrity, that's the piece that creates psychological safety. In fact, now that we're thinking about going back to work, I don't remember what Canada is doing in terms of them opening up, you guys opening up the economy and people going back to work. I don't know anything about that. I live in the US. God forbid we should use data to go back to work. So we have people who are not physically safe at work because we are not paying attention to the values. We're not treating them fairly. We're not treating them consistently. We're not treating people with respect. And all of that stuff creates psychological and then physical safety. Well, probably physical before psychological. So when I think about integrity, I think the more I act with integrity, the more respect people offer me, right? You can't demand respect. People only offer respect to you. So, and then the safer I feel as a manager, and the more I can increase safety at work. So if I think about the think, feel, and act, there are several principles. The first is build empathy with the people doing the work. Because if you understand, I say you don't have to understand what they're doing. You need to understand the risks and the dynamics, the delays, what they need to do the work, all that stuff. If you understand that, you can manage those people because managing them is leading and serving. So if you build empathy with the people doing the work and you extend trust, then you can also delegate problems and outcomes. You don't have to delegate tasks. Annie, you do this. Brad, you do that. Cindy, you do this. David, you do that. No, that's craziness. You say, team, here's a problem. here are the outcomes I want. Do you have all the capabilities and skills? Do you have all the equipment you need to manage this problem? And if they say no, then you solve that problem first. But this is why you delegate problems and outcomes, and you keep yourself from being in the middle of the work. Then the next principle is make sure that you coach others so they can solve the problems they encounter, even if you could do the work faster, right? So if we go back to Steve, who was a peer of mine, if he had said, I want some help with this so that we could finish it in 3 days, because he was a very fast typist and he thought really fast also. So, but if he said, I would like us to figure out how to do all of this, we could have all worked together. He would not have had to pull all-nighters, and we would have all been happy with the end result. The biggest thing, I think, is admitting mistakes or admitting when you don't know. I have found that in my career, the more I say, I don't know, or I was wrong, I'm sorry, people respect me more for that. So that's a really big piece. That's a huge piece of integrity. And then you can model your value-based integrity for the people you lead and serve. So those are the principles for managing yourself. And that all these principles affect how you will explain how you affect the culture. So let me talk a little bit about managing versus leading and serving. So we often use manage as the catch-all phrase. And the catch-all phrase really should be leading and serving. If we say we want these kinds of outcomes, we have led people. We've explained what the purpose is. We explained what we want them to do, not in here, do this thing first, do this thing second, do this thing third, but here's the problem, here's the outcome I want. Notice that that is very different than directing and controlling. When managers direct and control, they are not managing the system. They are trying to direct work of other people. So I would like you to do a little thought experiment. I would like you to think back to the best manager you've had and how did you feel when you worked there? And do you remember the work of the teams? And then take just one of your terrible managers, because I'm sure you've all had many, many terrible managers. And how did you feel when you worked there? And do you remember any of the work? And I'm going to ask for participation. And Shahin, you are in charge of how we participate. So I'm going to take a sip of my water. And I will open up the chat.
So who wants to volunteer? That's typically how if there's anyone, I can volunteer myself, because I was thinking about the.
Well, why don't you start? Because you are ready to start.
Right. So when I was thinking about the best manager that I had, I felt free. I'm not sure if that's a feeling or not, but that's how I would describe it. And I would remember the work, the team, not the work. So if you ask me what you have done, I wouldn't like exactly remember, but I exactly remember how I felt and how like we were having fun. And one of the terrible managers, it felt for me confined. I didn't have freedom to do what I want. I was being watched or told. And I exactly remember the work that has been asked for me. It wasn't the same for me. Yeah.
So I find that really fascinating that you remember the freedom and the people, and
Right.
then you remember the drudgery and the work.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, those are like opposite things.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating. Yeah, it's the same for me.
Right.
Yeah. Anybody else while while I am pausing?
We have a message from Sachin in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. With a bad manager, I felt like I had to work for the project as well as the manager, as he acted above the team instead of with the team. And I think it will resonate with a lot of us with the terrible managers.
Yep. So let's talk about a little bit about leading and serving and how to create that environment. So the first thing I want you to think about is resource efficiency versus flow efficiency. So Shahin, when you said, I remember the team, I remember the freedom, you were probably working maybe not in perfect flow efficiency, but something as part of a collaborative team.
Yeah.
You were, you were working, the team was the unit. And what I find is that when people work in resource efficiency, which is this one down below, the work arrives, and I do my thing, and then I hand it off to somebody else, and then I hand it off to somebody else, and it comes back to me at some point, right? This is the problem with waterfall, because the feedback loops are so long. That when managers reinforce resource efficiency, it's too easy to take away all the joy of the work. But when we work in flow efficiency, we are much more likely to feel that freedom to learn and to remember the team, even if we don't remember the work. Because that you actually said exactly my experience. I think that's funny. We're not twins separated at birth, but yeah, it's fine. And the reason people don't always believe in flow efficiency is that we have very outdated management assumptions. So you might remember from the 70s, McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y. And in Theory X, that's the stuff in pink, that people avoid the work, they need to be controlled, they don't want responsibility, they're only in it for the money, the only reason they use their creativity is to get around the rules. And then there's Theory Y, where it says people want to master their work, people can manage themselves. People want responsibility. They want to learn and accomplish something that's greater than they are, and people are creative. If you remember Dan Pink's drive, purpose, autonomy, and mastery, that's all Theory Y. And we have policies and procedures that are all about Theory X. Let's prevent anything bad from happening so we don't allow the best part of Theory Y management. So one of the things I like to say is that people can do the job, people can master the challenges, people can take responsibility for the work and the relationships, and there might be more. And the reason I can't say will, but I can say can, is that people might need some support or training, right? Not everybody knows how to do this. And I certainly, back at the beginning of my career, I did not have the vital few interpersonal skills that I have now. My husband would tell you he has smoothed off all of my rough edges. I think some of my rough edges still come through. So I think it's really important. I can use my interpersonal skills, and I still need more work on them. This is true of all of us. All of us, none of us are perfect by design or anything. We all need to learn stuff. So one thing I have realized is that the more Theory Y thinking we have, the more management integrity we have. So there's all kinds of myths about leading and serving others. One of my favorites is that managers want to know that the people are engaged. Mostly, if we just get out of the way and stop disengaging them, they're engaged. there's this whole business of performance reviews and people or resources. Performance reviews are possibly the most damaging thing you can do for any individual's performance. The best thing you can do is offer reinforcing feedback and correcting feedback if you need to. I got great feedback early in my career that I didn't finish everything all the way to the end. And I learned how to do that. I have checklists now. I still don't like finishing. I would much rather start something. Yeah, I'm one of those people. But I know about that and I know what to do about it now. And this whole notion of calling people resources, that makes me more than half crazy. Whiteboards are resources, books are resources, all the desks are resources, but people are resourceful. So let me talk about this one myth over here. You can keep even marginally useful people on a team. I'm going to talk about this woman named Cindy. That was not her name. So Cindy had many fewer interpersonal skills than I did, even early in my career. And she was always telling people that their designs were broken and that they were not doing things right. And she did not have an easy word to say for anybody at all on the team. However, Cindy had specific skills that I had really wanted as a manager. So I hired her as a contract employee for 6 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, the rest of my team came to me and they said, every single person said, it's either us or her. You need to get rid of her. She is destroying all of our teamwork. When you have an ungeller, when you have someone who is not able to manage the interpersonal skills and the technical work, you have to get rid of that person. So I actually found her a job with somebody else, a competitor actually, and across town, and they were all very happy. And we were all very happy. So it's really important. Don't keep marginally useful people on the team. It might not have been her. In this case, it was Cindy's interpersonal skills. But if people cannot do the job, you have to get rid of them. Now, you can help them find another job, but the first thing you do is take them out of the team that they're working in. As soon as I took Cindy out of the team that she was working in, that team really improved. So never underestimate how bad performance on the part of one person can affect the entire team. One thing I've seen that when managers don't lead and serve, aside from being incongruent, right? If I had said to everybody there, well, I really need Cindy, can't you just put up with her for another 3 weeks? I would have been asking them to placate me, right? So that's incongruent. But instead, I respected them and I had empathy. So when managers don't lead and serve, you don't have congruence, you don't have respect, you don't have empathy. And as Jahin said, the work really feels like drudgery. You remembered the work, and how you felt about it, but you did not remember the team, and it was horrible. So the principles for leading and serving others is to first encourage flow efficiency, especially in an Agile team, especially. When people feel as if they have each other's backs, when people feel as if they are part of a bigger whole, it's not just my little thing and then my little thing and my little thing. This is why I hate the idea of tickets for an Agile team. That the whole purpose goes away when you have tickets. So when you think about flow efficiency, that helps people feel as if they're a part of the entire piece, a part of the entire project. You create a physically and psychologically safe environment. You extend trust. You offer reinforcing feedback. You use experiments to practice small changes. I am always astonished by how few experiments I see in managers. of supposedly agile teams and supposedly agile organizations. We need more experiments. So we need to look for outcomes, not outputs, and we need to offer training. I am also surprised by the number of organizations I consult to where I said, you know, these people really want some training. You could bring in a 2 or 3 day workshop or even a 5-day workshop about TDD, and I have some people I can recommend, and you could practice on your own stuff, and you would have all kinds of tests. You would be in so much better shape at the end of 1 week. You would get that money back inside of a week, right? That's how good it would be. And they say, oh, but we're going to have to stop. We're going to have to slow down on the work that we're. Yeah. So training is actually, if you cannot figure out how to make the case for training so that you get the money back inside of a month or two, yeah, maybe that training is too expensive. But people need training. They want it. And then make sure you clarify all these interpersonal skills for all of the roles. I have certainly worked in organizations where I was the most capable for interpersonal skills. And I tend to be blunt and direct. So that just goes to show you there's a place for all of us. But I think it's really important to say, how do we make the minimum known? How do we do that? So now the third principle, the third piece of great management, especially in agile organizations, is that great managers lead for innovation. So Peter Drucker said this: every organization, not just businesses, needs one core competence, innovation. And I would like you to think about some of the organizations. I hope you don't work for these organizations now, but I find it's many managers want those plans. They want plans for 18 months or 5 years and all that stuff. So it's really important to say, how can we manage for innovation? And this is where I look at where managers spend time, because I find that not enough managers is spending time in the strategic thinking. We do need high-level plans, and we do need longer time frames. What kinds of customers do we want? What kinds of products and services do we want to sell them? And then that means that we have to answer the why question. All this is unique to the context and it's long-term thinking. But if we only do tactical stuff, we might even get really good at execution, but we don't have a plan for where we're going to end up at the end of it. So one of the other things I see a lot of, I bet you guys do too, is that if I hear Spotify model one more time, I mean, Spotify doesn't use a Spotify model. They keep changing it. They keep experimenting. So it's really important to say, what do we want to take for that is well known and well understood, and then how do we have to adapt it so it fits our context, right? How do we make it so that the principles of everything that aligns with what we do? And I find that when we do more strategic thinking, we are more likely to get to that place. So there's organizational leadership myths, and especially comparing teams and 100% utilization. If you know about my work, you know I'm very big on managing the project portfolio, which is the antithesis of 100% utilization. So I'm going to tell you a little story about another myth about standardizing on how people work. Several years ago, I had taught my Agile class to a series of workshops to this one local financial institution here in Boston, and they were starting to figure out what made sense for them, and it wasn't really Scrum, it wasn't really Kanban, it was sort of a mix of everything. They didn't really mob that well, but they swarmed pretty well. They had a lot of interrupting work, but they still needed to plan at a regular cadence. I mean, this is right typical kind of story. It's if you use flow and you use a cadence, you can pretty much do what you need to do. A new CIO came in, and he called me one Friday afternoon and said, I want to standardize on everybody's Agile approach. We're going to have teams. They're all going to work on a regular 2-week cadence. I want you to teach them a Scrum. I said, okay. My experience is that that's not really going to work for the interruptions that the team has. Is there a reason why you've decided on Scrum? It worked at the last bank I was at. It's going to work here. And oh, by the way, I want you to teach all the managers, and you have 2 hours to do it. We have 45 managers. You have 2 hours, and we're going to standardize. We're going to use story points as our metrics. I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to work. So I said, that's not going to work. He said, are you telling me I'm wrong? I said, I don't think so. I think I'm telling you that what you did in your previous context is not going to work that well in this context. He said, I'm the boss. We're going to do it this way. Fine. So I declined that work because I could not see how to actually do it. And the last I knew, they had totally disbanded any Agile approach. They were back to waterfall. So he was not able to think about innovating just in what the teams did and how their managers managed. So I found that quite sad, actually. But I see it more often than I would like to. So what I find is that when I see and work with managers like that, they want somehow people to behave in lockstep. They think that there's this mechanistic view of the organization. The organization is a well-oiled machine. I beg to differ. I'm a one-person organization. I'm not a well-oiled machine. We all have messiness in our organizations. I think we should optimize for the messiness, right? That means we need to have the why. Why do we exist? Why? What purpose do we serve for our clients, for our customers, for the greater community, for the employees, in any order you want them? But if you don't know your why, I don't think you can really make enough progress. And then iterate on the strategy. I find that way too many senior managers do not iterate on the strategy, which means they don't plan for change. I find this so interesting. As technical people, all of us create products that encourage, mandate, whatever, our customers and our greater communities to change. I was just thinking about this the other day. Back when I first opened my very first checking account, I had to go to the bank in person with a driver's license, and I did not get my checks for 3 weeks. You can now, I had a passport, a savings account passport. You don't even get savings books these days anymore. And this is back in the 70s, right? And so if we have changed only that much, when was the last time you went into a bank? I rarely go into a bank. Every so often I have to, and I think, what am I doing inside this building? So we have totally changed just in the last 40 years how we bank. We totally changed how we call on the phone. We've totally changed. I mean, the fact that the internet is everywhere, that's a huge change. So if we don't plan for change, we will be surprised by change. And that's something I don't really want to be surprised by. I want to ride the wave as much as possible. So the innovation principles are to clarify the organization's purpose, manage for effectiveness. Again, this outcomes, not outputs, flow efficiency at all levels. I didn't talk a lot about that. If you have managers, if you have functional managers working in their silos, not collaborating together, I don't see how the teams can succeed, not in an Agile organization. So you have to have flow efficiency at the team level, flow efficiency at the manager level, flow efficiency at the senior management level, flow efficiency all the way up and down. And then that means you can encourage small world networks of relationships. You don't have to, the problems don't have to go up and down the hierarchy. Problems can go everywhere. And that means you can have organizational integrity. You can encourage change and experiments and create transparency around decisions. Now, you're probably wondering, so none of this sounds really new and different. And I'm going to say no. I wish I was so brilliant that I had thought of all of this myself. No. But a lot of this is that we have a lot of common management thinking that knowledge work is the same as factory work. Factory work arose out of slavery. If you look at Accounting for Slavery, Rosenthal's book, it literally talks about the origins of cost accounting. It literally talks about dividing and conquering. It talks about inventory being good. So all the things that we know from the lean principles all come back to that horrible history. So I don't actually want to be affiliated with anything to do with slavery. I only want to be affiliated with stuff that sets people free. And if you're thinking about, well, what can I do as a manager? Managers create and refine the culture for everyone. So Shine talks about artifacts, values, and assumptions. I don't actually get it. I understand it as this. When we talk about how people treat each other, where do we extend respect and where don't we extend respect? What can people discuss? Can we talk about salaries? People talk about salaries anyway. Is there anything that we cannot discuss? And then how the manager in the organization rewards people. If you still have primarily individual rewards, you are not going to get the kind of teamwork that you could get if you had some variation on team-based rewards. And as long as you reward anybody on output, you won't get the outcomes. So it's really a challenge. Everything, I hope there are no HR people here, but yeah, probably my luck they are. So far, everything HR does in the US, I don't know what it's like in Canada, is antithetical for an Agile approach. Not because they're not fast enough, but because the policies and the procedures reinforce individual work, not team-based work. So I would like you to think about this. The culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. So I thought that Cindy was okay. The people I led and served, they told me she was not okay. I really needed to change. So I did. And I didn't tolerate that behavior anymore. So if I can leave you with one thing, the Agile management habits are not necessarily something that's easy for any of you to learn, and certainly not for your managers. I see something in the chat that I want to talk about after I'm done. And this means that we have to build our Agile management habits a little bit at a time. So, and this is not about perfection. None of us are perfect. I am certainly not perfect. I have more than my fair share of faults, but I think I try and say, how are my actions affecting the culture? And then how do I help people feel one way or the other? Do they feel free? Are they engaged with their colleagues? Or are they thinking that work is drudgery? And then what guides my actions? Am I creating and moving towards purpose, or am I just creating more outputs? So I recommend that you start with yourself, and that that you create a workplace based on dignity and respect. And I hope that we can stay in touch. The Pragmatic Manager, this talk is based on the Modern Management Made Easy books, and those are in progress. I am not yet done. Book 3 is in technical review now. I'm integrating the comments on book 2. Book 1 is sort of almost done, yeah. And I hope that you link with me on LinkedIn. So I'm going to stop the share. Okay, and I see that there is one question now. So Donald said, when it comes to training, how do we handle when the org just wants to use their own people to say the same message heard the first time? Is a COE a center of excellence?
Yes.
Okay, so my experience is that a center of excellence might be a center, but it's often a silo, and they don't know what the excellence is. So, yeah, you're nodding your head. That's disappointing. So I would actually go for criteria. I would say, here are the criteria by which I need this kind of training for these kinds of people, right? So Donald, if you're a manager, you might say, I need feedback training, and you guys might be great about feedback in general. However, we don't know how to give feedback, how to offer and receive feedback on our technical work. Can you give me an example of a time? This is an interview question. Can you give me an example of a time when you offered feedback on a technical design? And they often can say, well, no, and then you create criteria, and then you say the training from, let's talk about TDD, right? So I spoke with Ted Young today, and I know Alan Holub and Amitai Schleier, right? So all those guys do TDD training. So you can say, I need these 5 or 6 criteria are how I will address the viability of a trainer. And you become the technical coach for that kind of training. Because, yeah, they might be able to offer kind of normal feedback and coaching, but that's not what we do. The context is all wrong. So maybe if you talk about congruence, you don't have to label it, but you can say self-other in context. The context really matters for that. They might go for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Jean, what's your advice on the organization leadership that count on team members taking training on their time instead of the company offering the training? Cheap. I mean, so I'm a consultant, right? I pay for my own training. I'd like to pay for my own training because then I get to keep the books. I get to keep everything about it. But I think it's just stupid. Why? What, you're supposed to work a full week and then take training on your own time? I'm not sure. I am sure. Oh God, I'm just going to say this. I'm sure that the senior managers have training for them, and they are able to take training whenever they need it. So I'm not sure why the organization, the leadership says you must do this on your own time. So if you're like me and you don't care if they fire you, right? You have to figure out where your boundaries are. You can say, so I'm going to take off Thursday from noon to 5 to do this training or whatever it is that you need to do. And I will be back in the office on Friday morning, and I am not available for Slack or for calls or for text or for email. I am spending time in training. And I bet your boss would say, okay, because that's my experience. When the leadership tries to bully you, if you stand up to them, they tend to say, okay, or they fire you. So you need to be ready for any of those eventualities.
One of the issues, Joanna, that we ran into, sorry, along those same lines is we have a lot of computer-based trainings available to us. I work in a large company and, we've got Pluralsight, LinkedIn Learning, all of those things. And yet still they want us to do that on our own time. Hey, thanks for paying for those tools, but they're not giving us the opportunity to do that, or some groups aren't, to do that on company time, which really technically you should be able to, but
So
yeah.
here's what a subversive person like me would do. I would get my colleagues together and say, let's do a learning hour, not at lunch, but a learning hour, either from 9 to 10 or from 1 to 2 or something like that, a learning hour either every day or every week, and start to go through some of those training. And if you do it as a team, first of all, if you're remote, they can't tell. And secondly, if you do it as a team, they can't tell. So I am probably not subversive enough for my own good, but I strongly recommend you get your colleagues together and say, on Mondays at 3 or on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Monday through Friday, whatever it is, we're going to go through this an hour at a time and go through this class. And we will do it as a team. And if you can apply it to your to the project you're working on, I don't see how anybody can tell that you're not actually working on the project. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. So Jeff says, I'd love to hear your perspective on the role of measuring agility during Agile transformations. Have I seen any positive outcomes? No. I measure cycle time and lead time. I measure revenue. I don't measure net promoter score because that's just stupid. I measure customer acquisition and customer retention. I believe in measuring business value. If teams, I have not looked at the agility health stuff in a long time. If teams say, we want to look at ourselves and say, where are we with our daily check-ins? Are we actually getting there every single day? Do we have enough unit tests? I'm really focused on TDD these days because none of my clients are doing it and I don't teach that. So are we doing anything like TDD? Do we have tests across the continuum? But I find that there's a lot more value in measuring cycle time and looking for the value stream maps, seeing where the delays are.
Thanks. I love your direct style. Would you offer metrics like cycle time as a counter offer to a desire to have? I mentioned agility health. I don't mean to.
I'm sure they're.
Anything,
I'm sure they're fine. Yeah. So, I either like. So I want to know that we're doing better than we did. And the reason to do this goes back to the why. I have not yet written my Agile transformation book. But I have to finish the 4 I'm working on. No more work in progress. Finish, Johanna, finish. So if you don't have a why for your Agile transformation, then any assessment is fine. But if you have a why for your transformation, then you will say, are we making progress on this thing? So one of my clients, a very large Fortune 20 company, right? Very, very large. Divisions worldwide, everywhere, all over the world. Their project portfolio was a total disaster. They have 800 projects and only 4,000 people to do them. So, I mean, and everybody is multitasking, and it's a total disaster. So they said, I'm working with them, I hope, and I asked them what their why was. What did they want to get out of this? And too few of the middle and senior managers had thought about that question. So until I got to the real CIO who said, we have to make progress on the stuff that really is important to us. And we're not. We're making dribs and drabs of progress on everything, and we're not doing the most important stuff. That was their why. That's something you can measure. So when you know the why, now you can measure against it. So instead of a general agility assessment, which I'm sure the people at Agility Health are lovely people, that's not the point. But until you measure, until you know the why, you can't do business metrics. And that's really the key, because all of those other measures are just not useful. But the business metrics, which is why cycle time and lead time are useful, right?
Thanks. I really like that, focusing on like, why are we doing this stuff? Because otherwise they're bleeding money and they just want to cling to something that there's a progression happening. But yeah, what I'm taking away from this is, if they can't answer why, then just doing some type of assessment that measures practice adoption is just delaying getting to that answer and then have a meaningful conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so Chris, do I have any advice for someone stepping into a manager role with a newly assembled group? Of course I do. You're so surprised. I've seen you on my webinars earlier this spring. Okay, so the first thing I would do is understand the purpose of this group, right? Is this a project-based group? Is it whatever their purpose is? This is the why again. And then I would actually have one-on-ones with every single person and talk with them, excuse me, about their goals for their career. Because not enough managers, especially in an agile organization now, decide to ask that question, right? So I'm sure you know about one-on-ones, but the very initial one-on-one, and even if you started 3 weeks ago, you can say, you know, I didn't ask you this. I would like to know. So you can have another initial one-on-one. You can do over. It's fine. It's not a problem. And then I would say, I would ask people what they want to learn. And I would set up learning times as a team, specifically for the things the team needs to learn. So Chris, is this a single function team or a cross-functional team?
One place I'm applying, it's a single function. One place, it's a cross-functional team.
Okay, so I would definitely do the for the single function team, they will need to learn how to work across the organization, and for the cross-functional team, they'll need to learn how to work together and how to respect each other's skills and capabilities. So I would start there. I assume you've read Behind Closed Doors: Secrets of Great Management. If you have not, I recommend it to you. And I talk a lot more about this in Modern Management Made Easy, Book 1, where you manage yourself, the kinds of things you would want to do. I think. I don't remember. Sorry. That's why I wrote it down. Let's see. I'm not going to try and say this person's name that starts with Ishwar. I'm sorry.
Sorry, my name is Sylvia.
How do you say your name?
I'll show my face. My name is Aishwarya.
Okay, I really like it, but I'm not going to try it. Sorry. I don't want to screw it up. Okay, you had mentioned about an instance where you had to remove the person from the team and the person did not have interpersonal or technical skills. Oh, so when is coaching right, and when do we decide coaching is not working? So I offered feedback to Cindy, and I said, your stances, the way you interact with people, and I've seen this, right? I saw it in our meetings. turns people off. It makes them kind of crazy. And did you notice so-and-so's face? So-and-so got angry. So-and-so slammed the table. Did you notice those things? Right? The data for the interpersonal skills. And she said, yeah, but I was right and they were wrong. So that I was not going to win with coaching. So the first thing I do was offer feedback. Then if the person is capable of receiving the feedback, then I go into coaching. Well, I ask if they want coaching from me, or do they want coaching from somebody else? Because maybe they want coaching from somebody else. That's fine. But especially if it's a technical skill. I find that if I am the manager, I am often the wrong person to do any of the technical skill coaching because I want to encourage flow efficiency, right? Why would I insert myself there? I want people to pair or swarm or mob in some fashion. So I have sort of a guideline. It's not a rule that if the coaching after 6 weeks of coaching, it's not working, it's time to move that person on out. And I don't move that person across the organization. I move the person out of the organization. And I tend to first isolate them so that they stop inflicting pain on any team. I just take them off any teams. And I often discover that there might be some work, but so little of our work is independent these days. I often find that that's kind of the best way I can to move them on out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are those pirate metrics, Shahin?
Yeah, you were briefly talking about that when you said.
Yeah, pirate metrics. Okay, John has no micro camera. In addition to leading by example, what about managers teaching, coaching their team members to also be developing their self-management skill? Yes. The intention being self-leading teams becoming made up of self-leading team members. Yes. Yes. I just have to agree. Yeah, you're right. But this is why leading by example, exercising your personal integrity is so important to all of this kind of stuff in the organization. Because people see what you do, they will, a lot of the people I led and served laughed at my interpersonal skills because I asked them for feedback. I said, I am blunt and direct. I want to know before I have, pissed you off, don't let me piss you off. Give me feedback, right? I asked for the feedback. And there are plenty of times when I coach them and there are times that they coach me. And I think that I happen to have more responsibility in terms of fiduciary responsibility. So that's why I'm kind of higher in the organization, but it's more that I have, my span of influence is larger. And that means it's even more important how I come across to people, if that makes sense. Okay. Temi, what advice would you give to someone like me who is just coming into the Agile space? I have an HR background. Thanks in advance. Sorry if I offended you, Temi. I hope I did not. Well, I probably did. So I think
don't worry about it.
I think it really depends on what you want to do.
Okay.
So if you want to serve a team, I strongly recommend you understand what does software development look like, right? What does product development look like? Where are the risks? Where are the dynamics? Where are the delays? When I say cycle time and lead time, what does that mean? Those happen to be lean terms. Cycle time is the time from the time it comes off the ready column until it gets released. Lead time is the time it comes onto a team's board until it goes out to the customer. So where are the delays in that process? And if you can start understanding that, you can be a very effective facilitator for a team. and that might be a manager, might be something like a Scrum Master or an Agile project manager. It's really about thinking what makes sense for me to learn so I can serve other people.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Okay, so are we? I still have time, so I don't know if anybody else still has time. I think it's all up to you guys. Are there more questions?
I have one question myself to ask, or more. I really liked how you put it, delegate problems and outcomes. And I would say delegate outcomes over problems. So with the people that are not, or with the leaders or managers that are not team or flow efficient focused, how would you get them to delegate outcomes? Because what I typically see is that they delegate problems. This is the problem, and they have an outcome in their mind.
Oh, so I often see that for that, I more see that they delegate a task, and they think that you're going to do a task in this way, right? Following their process. So it's fine if you want to say outcomes. I think that that's really, I think the key is almost no work in any organization has to be defined by the process by which we do it. Almost all work is about the outcome. So if there's somebody who is not so sure that they want, that they can delegate an outcome, I'm trying to think of the questions I would ask. This is a good question. I feel a blog post coming on. So, because I actually blogged earlier this week about delegating problems and outcomes, right? What's the problem we want to solve? What are the results that we want to see? I think as long as you talk about the results you want to see, and then if the manager still wants to talk about do step 1, step 2, step 3, you can ask, how does this fit into the entire scheme of work, right? So start to ask more of those why questions and start to ask more of the context questions. When I find that when managers do that, they're quite worried that people are not going to deliver what they think that people need to deliver.
Right. Extend trust, as you said. It's not there.
Yeah. 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 Okay, do I have any books to recommend the learning path for Agile coaching? So Elisa's book is quite good. I strongly recommend that you read other books about coaching. I actually think that, I'll just say this. I think that the market for Agile coaches is super saturated. So if you want a better job, I would make sure that you understand what you're looking for as an Agile coach. Because you can play bowling with Agile coaches these days. I mean, I'm not sure that an Agile coach is what you want to be.
This is more like within the organization, we want to coach individuals. We are not hiring a special coach from outside. So it's like cultivating an Agile coach within the organization.
So how is an Agile coach different than any other coach?
Oh, we don't have any other coach right now.
So let me step back and go a little bit meta. So my opinion on Agile transformations is that they start with the managers, and the managers start to work in flow efficiency, and that changes the entire culture. So if you are coaching above your pay grade, how would you do that? And you don't have to answer that question because I don't want to put you on the spot. So that's where you need to understand managers and an approach to coaching. You also need to understand influence. So I recommend you read the Modern Management Made Easy books, but I also recommend that you read behind closed doors, secrets of great management, because you need to see what happens. If you need to coach managers, you need to see the pressures on them. And I strongly recommend that you read Jean Labord's Influencing with Integrity. I'm wearing shorts, so I'm not going to stand up, but I think it's over there. But I'm not going to, I refuse to be on camera wearing shorts. So, but Influencing with Integrity, I think that Cialdini, is his book Persuasion or Influence? I don't remember. Right, Cialdini. When you coach non-peers, you tend to need more influence and persuasion than you need coaching skills. So I strongly recommend you look at that, because coaching to me is creating options with support, right? The person might create the options. I might help creating options, but my job as a coach is to support the other person in their growth. And I think that you are talking about a different form of coaching, not just that. In Create Your Successful Agile Project, I have a table of 9 possible coaching stances that you might want to consider, right? Some of those, sometimes a coach is a teacher. I don't recommend you do that with more senior leaders, right? Because then they think you're talking down to them. So, I mean, I think that all the stances of coaching are more important than thinking about the here's how to coach, right? So you might have the same problem I do with books. I bet a lot of them are at the library. So yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, you could do that. Let me find so let me find the Modern Management Made Easy series is on LeanPub right now, because I have not finished it. If you don't like buying books in progress, don't buy them. There, I said it. So, but if you don't mind buying books in progress, they're numbers 1 and 3 are in great shape. I'm integrating comments from book 2 now, so soon. I actually hope by the end of the weekend to be done with book 2. I don't know if I can actually get that all done, but that's the plan. The plan. Other questions? Okay, Shahin, it's all yours.
I guess that's it. And thank you, Johanna, for spending time with us. We really, truly appreciate that. I really enjoyed the session, and the fact that we went over and people stayed, that shows the value. Thank you so much for being on Lean Agile Network. To all that being said, let's give Johanna a round of applause, guys. And thank you, Johanna.
Thank you, thank you. I really had fun.
Yeah. And we'll be seeing you guys in 2 weeks for a lean coffee, probably on modern management.